Okay, the G chord. When we first start learning the guitar, the G chord is one of the first chords that we start learning. But what's interesting about the G chord is how many different ways there are to actually play a G chord. We have a lot of different ways that we can actually play a G chord. When we first start learning how to play guitar, we have a simple 3-string G chord, sounds like this. As we begin our lessons on beginner G chords, we have to look at why you would choose to use alternative fingering traditional G chord versus the traditional G chord. When we look at the original G chord, it looks like this. First finger on 5th string, 2nd fret. Second finger on the top string, string 6, 3rd fret. And third finger on the 3rd fret, bottom string, string 1. Sounds like this. It's also the simple way for playing your beginner G chord, only 3 strings. You can see how I transition. An alternative G chord looks like this. Second finger on 5th string, 2nd fret. Third finger on 6th string, 3rd fret. And 4th finger, pinky finger, on your 1st string, bottom string, 3rd fret. Same positionings as a traditional, only difference is that you switch which fingers you're using. Beyond that, we also have a rock guitar G, which sounds very similar, but in alternative, we have to use 4 fingers. So we're going to start with our first 2 fingers the same as a traditional G, but instead we're going to add on a finger 3 and a finger 4. Finger 3 adds on the D note instead of a B, which gives us a slightly richer, more full sound. It's very often used in acoustic and alternative, and occasionally in blues, rock, various forms of guitar. Slightly different sound to it. Finally, we have variations on a bar G. A bar G chord looks like this. Pointer finger goes across all of the strings. Your other 2 fingers create what's known as an E major chord. The biggest reason why we would want to use the alternative fingering when you're first starting off learning how to play the guitar is because when you learn to switch from chord to chord to chord to chord, you'll notice that the positioning of your 2nd and 3rd finger easily shift from one chord to another without much movement for the rest of your hand. So if you watch, I'm going to switch from a G chord to a C chord, to an alternative F chord, bottom 4 strings, to a D major chord. Back to G. In progression, it looks like this. There are hundreds of thousands of different songs that use G throughout their chord progression, but what you have to remember is that the different ways to play G will give you a different sound quality each time you play it. For instance, rock G. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Alt fingering. Traditional G. Don't go around tonight, it's bound to take your life. There's a bad moon on the rise. Here's another with alt fingering for a traditional G chord. Remember when We used to sing sha la 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 ti da, just like that. Sha la 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 ti da, la ti da. Occasionally, guitarists will use tools like the capo to raise the key of the entire piece of music so it's easier to perform, or sometimes just to get us a different tonality. But overall, the same exact chord progression is still being performed. This particular song's a little low for me, so I raise it up a half step. I'm still using a G chord, but I'm going to alternate G chord and actually play it as an A chord because I'm raising the key. Sounds like this. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, down, down as the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. Here's another one that's been capoed but still uses a G chord. Lately I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. Baby, I've been praying hard. Said no more counting dollars, we'll be counting the stars. I hope you've learned a lot about why to use the alternative fingering for a traditional G chord over the traditional fingering for a regular G chord. Thanks for learning. Hope to see you next time.